The midday sun blazes over the vast plains of Late Cretaceous North America. Herds of hadrosaurs graze in uneasy peace, their heads dipping low to tear at ferns and shrubs, tails swaying like pendulums in rhythm with the warm wind. For a moment the land is quiet, nothing more than the hum of insects and the rustle of leaves. But then something changes. The light shifts. A shadow stretches across the herd, too sharp, too immense to be a passing cloud. The hadrosaurs raise their heads in alarm, eyes scanning the horizon. Above them, the sky itself seems to darken, split by the silhouette of an airborne giant. Its wings stretch wider than a small plane, casting a shadow that ripples across the ground. Quetzalcoatlus. The name comes much later, but the fear is immediate. To the creatures below, this is no myth, no feathered serpent of legend. It is a hunter, a scavenger, a presence that rules the skies with silent authority. Its long, spear-like beak tilts downward, and with a single motion, the giant dips closer, air currents trembling under the beating of its colossal wings. For the herd below, the question is survival. For us, millions of years later, the question is wonder. How did such a creature exist? How could something so massive master the air? And what did it mean to live in a world where the skies belonged to a giant? The late Cretaceous world was a land of extremes. The continents had shifted into familiar outlines, yet the climate was unlike anything we know today. Seas flooded deep into the land, carving inland oceans that shimmered beneath a blazing sun. Forests of conifers, cycads, and flowering plants blanketed the coasts, while vast open plains stretched into horizons dotted with herds of dinosaurs. On these plains, the ground shook with the weight of titans. Hadrosaurs gathered in groups, lowing to one another as they grazed on lush vegetation. Triceratops moved in defensive circles, horns angled outward, watching every shadow with wary eyes. Even Tyrannosaurus, the undisputed apex predator of the land, prowled these regions, its heavy steps leaving deep impressions in the soft earth. But the sky was not safe either. Above the herds, above the hunters, another kingdom reigned. It was a kingdom of air, of currents and winds mastered by beings unlike anything alive today. Pterosaurs had ruled these skies for over 150 million years, but among them, one stood apart. One was so immense that it redefined what it meant to fly. Quetzalcoatlus, with wings spanning nearly 11 meters, longer than a bus, it was the undisputed giant of the skies. Its presence turned the heavens into a hunting ground, and the plains into an arena of fear. When its shadow fell across the land, creatures froze, because in that moment they understood. Death could come not from claws in the grass, but from the silence above. This was the stage on which Quetzalcoatlus lived, a world teeming with life, danger at every level, and opportunities for giants to rise. To understand this flying colossus, we must first walk through its world, see through the eyes of its prey, and feel the tremor of its wings across the ancient skies. From a distance, Quetzalcoatlus may have looked like an impossible silhouette, a long, spear-like beak, a neck stretched like a living crane, wings so vast they seemed more canvas than flesh. Yet every detail of this anatomy was no accident. Evolution had sculpted this flying fortress with precision, balancing strength and lightness, vulnerability and power. Its head was a weapon in itself. The beak stretched longer than a grown man, narrow yet deadly, designed not to chew but to stab and seize. Some prey would have seen only a flash of that pointed beak before their world ended, impaled or dragged upward into the sky. Along its skull, faint ridges hinted at crests, perhaps used for display or to stabilize flight, a banner declaring its dominance in the air. The neck, though long and seemingly fragile, was built from interlocking vertebrae that balanced flexibility with strength. This gave Quetzalcoatlus the ability to scan the ground below with precision, tilting its head like a heron, waiting for the right moment to strike. And when it landed, the neck could sweep forward with terrifying speed. plucking prey in a single thrust. But its wings were the true marvel. 11 meters from tip to tip, they stretched wider than most small planes, yet they were light enough to ride the winds. The bones were hollow, but reinforced, shaped like struts in a bridge. Muscles anchored deep into the chest allowed for powerful takeoffs, though unlike modern birds, Quetzalcoatlus likely launched itself not by running, but by vaulting forward on all fours, springing into the air with a motion more like a bat than a hawk. On the ground it stood as tall as a giraffe, its folded wings like great sails draped along its sides. Its limbs ended in sharp claws, useful not only for balance but also for scavenging. Some scientists believe it stalked the plains like a giant stork, picking off small dinosaurs, baby hadrosaurs, or carrion left behind by larger predators. Every part of its body carried a dual role, a giant that could dominate both land and sky. To see it launch into flight must have been like watching a siege engine come alive, an explosion of power, wings unfolding in a single sweep, air tearing around its body as it rose into the heavens. For the creatures of the Late Cretaceous, the sound of those wings was more than wind. It was the sound of inevitability. The air was Quetzalcoatlus' kingdom, and it ruled with silence. To see such a massive creature rise into the sky was to witness the triumph of evolution's engineering. With wings spanning 11 meters, the giant vaulted forward on all fours, pushing off the ground with muscular limbs before a single powerful downstroke lifted it aloft. The motion was sudden, explosive, like a catapult launching a fortress into the air. Once airborne, its dominance began. The wings stretched taut, membranes shimmering in the sunlight, casting shadows that rippled across the plains. Unlike modern birds, it did not need constant flapping. Instead, it mastered the thermals, the invisible rivers of warm air rising from the sunlit ground. With each thermal caught, the Titan climbed higher, gliding effortlessly, conserving its strength as it surveyed the world below. From this height, the horizon stretched endlessly. Herds of hadrosaurs became shifting patterns, like living currents. Rivers carved silver lines through forests of cycads and ferns. And here, above it all, Quetzalcoatlus was untouchable. No predator prowling the ground could challenge it. No rival in the air could match its size. But its shadow was a sentence. When it tilted its head downward, scanning with sharp predatory eyes, creatures below felt the weight of unseen danger. A lone juvenile dinosaur, wandering too far from its herd. A small mammal darting through open grass. Even the carcass of a half-eaten Triceratops, left behind by a Tyrannosaurus. All could become its next meal. The descent was a performance of inevitability. Quetzalcoatlus folded its wings slightly, trading height for speed, the air screaming against its body. Its neck extended forward, beak aimed like a lance. For the prey below there was no sound of warning, just a shadow expanding, a rush of displaced air, and then impact. The spear-like jaws struck with deadly precision, seizing flesh before the victim could even react. Sometimes it hunted alive, sometimes it scavenged, soaring low to land beside the kills of other predators, its immense size driving away smaller rivals. On the ground, it walked with an awkward grace, towering like a giraffe, beak probing carcasses with surgical patience, flesh, bone, even sinew. The Titan fed on all, recycling death into life. From above, it was a phantom, drifting with the currents, patient and calculating. From below, it was terror given form, an airborne executioner whose arrival was neither loud nor merciful. In a world already filled with predators, Quetzalcoatlus claimed its own throne, an empire of air and silence. To live under its shadow was to understand that the sky itself could kill. Quetzalcoatlus was not merely a creature of size. It was a strategist. Survival for such a giant meant more than brute force. It demanded patience, efficiency, and precision. Every flap of its colossal wings burned energy. Every flight carried a cost. To endure, it had to hunt with method, and the skies gave it the advantage. From above, it became a silent scout. Its sharp vision cut through haze and distance, allowing it to spot movement across the plains with uncanny accuracy. A herd of young hadrosaurs straying near a riverbank, a carcass glinting pale in the sun, abandoned by a predator that had eaten its fill. Even the splash of smaller reptiles in shallow pools, each was catalogued, weighed, and judged. Quetzalcoatlus did not waste effort. It chose targets that promised reward. When it hunted, the strategy shifted depending on the prey. Small dinosaurs and mammals were seized in quick strikes, the long beak stabbing downward like a spear. Soft-bodied prey, turtles, amphibians, or juvenile hadrosaurs, were swallowed whole, dragged into the elongated throat, and gulped down in silence. For larger meals, such as carrion, the giant stalked the ground, folding its wings and walking on all fours, towering over the earth like a moving scaffold. Here, its beak became a blade, slicing and probing until flesh was stripped clean. Competition was fierce. Tyrannosaurus prowled the same plains, and smaller pterosaurs circled the skies. But Quetzalcoatlus had a weapon neither could match: size and reach. When it descended on a carcass, smaller predators scattered. Even raptors, clever and fearless in groups, thought twice before approaching a titan that could snap them in half with a single strike. In this way, it claimed dominance without needing constant battle. Its presence alone was enough to rule. Yet survival carried risks. The titan's bulk demanded vast amounts of food. A missed hunt meant hunger. A broken wing meant death. To remain king of the skies, Quetzalcoatlus had to strike with near-perfect accuracy, balancing risk against reward in every move. Its reign was not endless flight or ceaseless slaughter. It was careful, calculated survival, a life lived on the knife edge of power and necessity. For millions of years, it endured. For millions of years, its shadow bent ecosystems around it. To see Quetzalcoatlus was to glimpse more than a predator. It was to see a survivor perfected by the demands of an unforgiving world. Though it ruled the skies, Quetzalcoatlus spent much of its life on the ground. Standing as tall as a giraffe, it was not a creature that vanished once it landed. It became a looming sentinel, its long neck swaying gently as it scanned the plains. To smaller animals, even its stillness was threatening. On land, it walked on all fours, wings folded neatly along its sides, knuckle joints supporting the vast membranes. Each step was deliberate, its gait a strange mix of elegance and menace. From a distance, it could be mistaken for a towering crane, until the proportions betrayed the truth. The colossal wings, the spear-like beak, the predatory focus in its eyes. It stalked quietly across open fields, probing for carcasses, or lingered near riverbanks where young dinosaurs risked straying too close. Unlike Tyrannosaurus, it needed no roar or chase. Its presence alone scattered smaller creatures, making opportunities fall into its path. But even giants needed rest. Fossil evidence suggests that pterosaurs may have gathered in colonies, their immense wings folding as they perched or knelt upon the ground. Picture a nesting colony of Quetzalcoatlus, dozens of titans rising and settling, their wings rustling like sails, their long necks tilting upward to watch for danger. It was less a flock than an army of shadows, claiming entire stretches of land as their own. Nesting was a vulnerable time. Eggs were likely buried or hidden in sandy soils, warmed by the sun. Juveniles, much smaller, lacked the wingspans of their parents. But even then, they were predators in miniature. They hunted insects, small reptiles, and fish, growing rapidly until they could rise into the air. Entire generations must have crowded these ancient plains, filling the horizon with the silhouettes of wings. On the ground, Quetzalcoatlus was less graceful than in flight, but no less dangerous. Its size deterred most challengers, and its beak was still a lethal weapon. Few predators risked confrontation, and even Tyrannosaurus might have hesitated if the giant stood its ground. To share the earth with such a creature was to walk in its shadow, even when it did not fly. Life on the ground revealed a truth often forgotten. Quetzalcoatlus was not just a ruler of the skies. It was a titan of the land, as well, straddling both worlds with a dominance few creatures in history could claim. On the Cretaceous plains, no creature lived in isolation. Even Quetzalcoatlus, master of the skies, crossed paths with the titans of the earth. Each encounter was a contest of presence, power, and survival. Imagine a Tyrannosaurus feasting on a fallen Triceratops. Its jaws tear through flesh, bone crunching under immense pressure. Vultures of the future would circle overhead, but here a different shadow glides in. Quetzalcoatlus lands with a thunder of wings, folding itself into a towering silhouette. The pterosaur does not roar, does not charge, but its size, its height, its unflinching patience speak louder than sound. Tyrannosaurus snarls, blood dripping from its muzzle, eyes narrowing at the intruder. For a moment, tension holds the plain. Then, with a slow sweep of its beak, Quetzalcoatlus advances. The giant is no killer of Tyrannosaurus, but neither is it prey. The carcass can feed them both. Elsewhere, herds of hadrosaurs graze under the midday sun. Adults form a wall of tails and bodies around their young, snorting as they shift uneasily. The shadow falls across them, and the herd erupts in motion. Quetzalcoatlus circles once, then folds its wings and drops with precision. Its beak jabs at the outskirts, scattering stragglers. If fortune favors, a juvenile stumbles, and the beak strikes again, dragging it skyward. To the herd, the sky itself has become a predator. Even Triceratops was not immune to its presence. At waterholes where the great horned dinosaurs bent their heads to drink, Quetzalcoatlus lurked at the edges. It could not hope to challenge an adult, armored and horned, but calves were another story. The giant struck with speed, its beak flashing like a spear before retreating beyond horn's reach. Few creatures could protect their young against a predator that killed from above. These encounters shaped behavior across the plains. Hadrosaurs huddled tighter, Triceratops guarded waterholes more fiercely, and even Tyrannosaurus had to share its meals under the silent shadow of wings. Quetzalcoatlus did not need to dominate with brute force. It ruled by inevitability, a presence written into the lives of every creature below. To live in its world was to know that danger did not always stalk on heavy footsteps. Sometimes it descended from the heavens, a giant that claimed the sky and demanded respect on the ground. The day begins with the first light spilling over the Cretaceous horizon. Mist clings to the low plains, turning rivers into silver ribbons beneath the rising sun. From a cluster of nesting grounds, shadows stir. Wings unfold, stretching to their full, astonishing span, catching the first thermals of the morning. Quetzalcoatlus rises into the sky. It does not waste energy in frantic flapping. Instead, it vaults forward on all fours, wings snapping open with a sound like sails catching wind. In moments, the titan has left the earth behind. From above, the world spreads wide. Herds of hadrosaurs grazing, Triceratops clustered near a waterhole, and in the far distance, a lone Tyrannosaurus stalking through the brush. Morning is for searching. With keen eyes, Quetzalcoatlus scans the ground for opportunity. It drifts effortlessly on warm air currents, conserving strength while surveying the land. A glint of bone catches its gaze, the carcass of a hadrosaur. It circles lower, wings slicing through clouds, and lands with practiced grace. Its beak probes the remains, tearing strips of flesh, while smaller scavengers scatter at its arrival. This is a meal without risk, and it feeds until the sun climbs higher. By midday, heat ripples across the plains. Quetzalcoatlus rises again, circling above herds now restless under the sun. The titan casts its shadow deliberately, testing the reactions of the hadrosaurs. Adults push inward, forming walls around their young. The pterosaur hovers, then dives. Its beak jabs at the edge of the herd, scattering stragglers. A calf stumbles, and for a heartbeat the predator's beak lances forward, but the adults rally, driving it back. Not every hunt succeeds. It retreats to the air, circling once more. Hunger is patient, and opportunity always returns. As the sun sinks lower, it glides toward a riverbank. Here, fish flicker at the surface, and small reptiles bask on the edges. Quetzalcoatlus lands lightly, its long neck sweeping side to side. It stabs into the shallows, pulling up a writhing prey, swallowing it whole. The river gives easily, and the giant feeds until its hunger is dulled. Evening comes. The sky turns crimson, and the thermals fade. With wings folded, Quetzalcoatlus walks back to its nesting grounds, its towering silhouette outlined against the dying sun. Around it, smaller pterosaurs settle too, their calls echoing faintly. The titan lowers its long neck, resting at last. For the creatures of the plains, the night is a reprieve from its shadow. For Quetzalcoatlus, it is another day survived, a cycle of flight, hunger, and dominance that will repeat for millions of years. Long after the last Quetzalcoatlus vanished into extinction, the earth still carries whispers of its reign. Fossils preserved in Texan rock tell fragments of its story. Hollow bones as light as they were strong, impressions of wings that once cut through the sky, and the towering scale of a creature that challenged our imagination of flight. From these remains, paleontologists reconstruct not just an animal, but an era of dominance. Its anatomy shows nature's boldest experiment. No other flying creature reached such size. Not before, not since. Birds came later, but none with a wingspan to rival the titans of the Cretaceous. Bats developed in the shadows of mammals, yet their frames remained small. Quetzalcoatlus alone bridged the gap between the earth and the heavens, proving that the sky could belong to giants. The legacy is not measured only in fossils, but in influence. The very fact that such a creature flew pushes science to redefine the limits of biomechanics. How could a beast the size of a giraffe take to the air? How did its wings hold, its muscles endure, its body rise again and again from the earth? Each question answered reveals more about the limits and possibilities of life. Symbolically, it is more than a pterosaur. To us, it is a reminder that evolution is daring, that nature tests the boundaries of what is possible. It tells us that the world once hosted a sky where shadows longer than houses crossed the plains, where wings heavier than sails rode the winds. In legend, its very name echoes myth. Quetzalcoatlus recalls the feathered serpent god of Mesoamerica, a divine ruler of sky and storm. Though the creature was no serpent, the name is fitting. It was a living god of the air, a power that bent ecosystems beneath its flight. Its extinction was inevitable. The great asteroid ended its reign, as it did for dinosaurs and countless others. But the memory survives in stone, in science, and in imagination. To stand before its fossilized bones today is to confront a truth: that Earth's past was stranger, vaster, and more daring than we ever dreamed. Quetzalcoatlus lives on as both fact and legend, a fossil of fear, a myth of flight, a legacy of giants who once ruled the skies. The end came not with a slow fading, but with a sudden firestorm. 66 million years ago, an asteroid struck Earth, releasing the power of millions of nuclear bombs. Forests burned, skies darkened, and the food chains that had supported giants collapsed. Quetzalcoatlus, master of the skies, was no exception. Without prey, without light, without the ecosystems it once dominated, its lineage faltered. Imagine the last of them, wings spread across a storm-darkened sky, scanning the land for prey that no longer came. Hunger gnawed, the winds carried ash, and even the giants of the air could not endure forever. Within a generation, perhaps a few decades at most, the titans of flight were gone. Their shadows no longer fell across the plains. But extinction is not the same as erasure. In the silence that followed, their bones were buried, their story etched into rock, waiting for us to uncover it. Today, Quetzalcoatlus stands not as a forgotten relic, but as a symbol of life's boldest experiments. It reminds us that even the impossible can become real. that once the sky belonged to giants, and now their story belongs to us. To remember them is to honor the vast, daring history of life on Earth. To imagine them is to keep alive the truth that our planet has always been a stage for wonders beyond belief. So if this journey into the age of Quetzalcoatlus has sparked your imagination, don't let it end here. Like this video to help others discover the giant of the skies. Share it with friends who love prehistoric mysteries. And subscribe to the channel, because more stories of forgotten beasts are waiting, each one stranger, wilder, and more breathtaking than the last. Stay curious, stay adventurous, and join me again when we uncover the next ancient giant that shaped our world.